want to start with just a couple of facts. One of them is I want to make the claim that platform business models are coming to dominate the economy in ways I think are underappreciated. This particular slide shows from 2001 to 2012 the proportion of firms by market capitalization in the top 20 that are platform firms. By this I mean those that have an external ecosystem, either a system of developers or marketplaces like LegalZoom or Alibaba or even Uber, something like that. What's interesting is that it's underappreciated. The top 5 firms by market cap include 3 that are now platform firms. It's Apple, in order, it's Apple, Exxon, then Berkshire Hathaway, Google, and Microsoft. It's extraordinary what is actually taking place in it. Here are examples of marketplaces in law. I think we're going to have the privilege of the CEO of LegalZoom speaking tomorrow morning. It'll be very interesting to see those remarks. But look at the marketplaces that are happening. Yahoo Answers, you can get low-level legal advice, again, without the JD. I think folks sharing their experience there. LegalZoom, remarkable marketplace where you can actually get practice of law for about a quarter the price of a traditional law firm. It's remarkable what that does. But it's affecting all different levels of the marketplace. In business schools, we're affected with rent an MBA. Or I don't know how many of you know Elance or Odesk. It's now one of the largest labor markets in the world. In fact, they have millions of developers worldwide. They actually they originated in Greece, came into the United States, now operate in Europe. It's also interesting that these labor markets tend to be winner-take-all effects. If you take a look at how many of you use TripAdvisor versus a standard travel agent, you're aggregating the information of lots of individuals as opposed to one and getting more. It goes back to the comment, how many lawyers are smarter than all lawyers in there? Or if you look at edX versus community colleges, I've known of 3 community colleges that closed in the last year. You may be able to get expert advice from Stanford or MIT or Harvard on edX and get the best of the world in that particular location. Or Uber versus taxis. We get to see these winner-take-all effects in some of these marketplaces. It's also interesting, the data, there are 30 million Americans now on one of these marketplaces, 83% full-time. What they're earning, analogous to what we just heard, 56% earn less than $40,000 a year, 36% earn less than $25,000 a year. But anyone know what the median household income in the United States is? It's about $49,000 a year. 2 of these, you're already there. What's interesting is if you look at the data, I was surprised to learn 79% of these folks are actually satisfied with their work. They're actually happy working in these marketplaces. It gives them the flexibility. They can take the projects that they want. I want to think also about how these ecosystems create innovation. One of the best known voices in this is actually Mark Andreessen, who's here in Silicon Valley. And he argues about openness and how openness creates innovation. So fantastic observations on this. He talks about a platform can be adapted to the countless needs and niches that the original designers didn't anticipate. One of the points I want to emphasize is if we're designing an innovation ecosystem, we don't have to do it all ourselves. What we do is create the constituent parts to enable others to innovate and participate in the same sandbox, and that then leads to greater levels of innovation. To give you some illustrations of these kinds of properties, the top line is accesses to MySpace. The bottom line is accesses to Facebook over the period 2004 to 2008. You notice that the accesses grew dramatically for Facebook in 2 different points. Anyone know what this first bump is? Right here in 2006. I know there are some of you who have seen this before, all right? This is, they open from .edu to .com. That was access in some sense to a different portion of the market. This was a lower portion of that demand curve, if you will, adding a new marketplace. But where they got the real convex growth was over in this other portion when they opened themselves to developers. That's when they opened APIs and they got Zynga bringing them Mafia Wars and Farmville, which then folks then spend lots of time on there, bring in their friends and actually get that convex growth to engage and participate in the ecosystem. It's interesting that the founder of MySpace even said, we tried to do it all ourselves and we should have opened it, done the 5 to 10 things at the top and let the ecosystem innovate on everything else. Matter of fact, he is recapitulating the exact same mistake that Apple made in the 1980s and 90s. They kept a closed innovation ecosystem. And now, Steve Jobs got it right the second go-round. They've opened up the ecosystem, and Apple is now the most valuable company in the world. To show you how that works, imagine the platform as the bottom layer. This is the long tail diagram in which you've simply sorted the different applications by level of value from left to right. So on operating systems, this might be Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. If you look at your mobile phone, this might be the apps that come preloaded on it. Those are the ones controlled by the initial firm. That's the capital that you have to invest. That's the stuff at the high end of the demand curve. But what's interesting is that you don't need to own this. These are all the apps. Apple didn't invent Angry Birds. It created an ecosystem where Angry Birds became possible. So if you take the value add from here all the way over to here, by the time you're at the end, it's a tiny sliver of value, but what you've enabled in a marketplace is one party to serve the needs of another party within that marketplace. And the, if you will, the integral of that value from there all the way to the end is far higher than the value created at the head of the distribution. You've created, again, an innovation ecosystem. To describe it differently, let me show you a way to think of it. This would be the value add over time of an individual firm, individual organization. This is the innovations that you might do on your own. What happens when you open your ecosystem? You have third-party contribution. If you start from behind, this is a lower in the value chain, but you have a higher slope, you necessarily overtake the other organization. This is another argument why I say platforms beat products and services almost every time. The rate of innovation is higher. There's some other neat tricks in here. By enabling others, you enable permissionless innovation. They don't have to come to you with their idea in order to go build on it. They simply run with it, and that allows them to go build on that idea easily and quickly and do something on their own. Another element is, think of the costs of failure to the platform. There's zero cost of failure, but you get 30% of the upside. That's a really neat innovation trick if you can actually have folks bring you new forms of value that you didn't have to create. So it's a really neat way of creating, again, these innovation ecosystems where wealth can be captured and shared. It's worth pointing again how innovation takes place and how we service these markets generally. So how do firms provide value? Well, typically I'm going to argue it's employees inside the firm, or it tends to be contracts or crowds outside the firm, or the next one is machines and algorithms. This chart is the accuracy of questions answered and the number and the percentage of questions answered by all of the winners on Jeopardy. So this is the, over 15, 20 years of winners on Jeopardy, and you can actually see where they are over the plot. This line is where Watson started. And over the course of 4 years, it moved from 2006 to 2010 to the other curve there in terms of its accuracy. 3 months later, from this chart, they presented, Dave Ferruzzi presented this at MIT in November 2010. 3 months later in February, they won. It's that fast is the pace of innovation. It's quite remarkable how the innovation ecosystem has evolved over time. It's worth noticing what else is happening in these innovation ecosystems. Here, Westlaw is actually looking at e-discovery. Microsoft, I think, recently purchased a company doing that. Thomson Reuters the margins are getting thin on documents, so they're now starting to provide algorithms to incorporate legal services because those will have higher margins. It's interesting that the general counsel for IBM said Watson may be used for legal research coming soon. It's quite interesting. These things tend to start centralized, but then they go decentralized. You go and look at the app economy as an example. App markets for business and consumers already exist. It's likely to branch into law from finance. Watson opened its APIs in 2003 for education, retail, and medicine already. They've been moving rapidly into other market adjacencies and allowing the creation of these new apps and these new ecosystems. So I simply wanted to leave you with 3 points. One of them, the data suggests that platforms are becoming a significant force in restructuring the economy across professional services and in industry generally. They innovate faster, and platforms tend to beat products because of the evolutionary properties and the network effect. The second thing is drive innovation via openness. Mix and match components, permissionless innovation, modularity, and enabling third parties to add value is one of the ways these things happen. And the third thing is that work can be done inside the firm, or can be done outside by clients and contracts, or can be done even by machines and algorithms. And those are the kinds of things that we may be able to harness in ways that will eventually add value.